Hi, it's Dave, and it's built from scratch on the 11th of September 2020. I've been off for the last couple of days, and it's a Friday, so obviously I'm off for the weekend, and today is a bit of a sort of island in terms of work. So I just picked a couple of random things I wanted to get on with. So I started the day by actually doing some work on the side project, which I've mentioned a couple of times before, and I'm largely not working on at the moment, but today was a bit of an exception. So the side project is just something I've got sort of bubbling along just in case this doesn't work out and I need to earn a bit of money in a sort of more direct way than Wave is supposed to be earning money ultimately. And as such, I don't need it at the moment, and I'm not really supposed to be working on it. But the one thing I have been doing is just keeping an eye on what it's doing in terms of the search engine results pages. And at the moment, what it's doing is essentially nothing. When I first created the site, it got discovered by Google and the pages got indexed. But I can't remember if I've mentioned this before, but I put the site together in a live environment. I didn't do it in what they call a dev environment, where you are creating the site away from Google and then launching it all at once. I've done that in the past, and it's not really caused a problem in terms of what pages get indexed, because although it has always meant that pages that are in development do get indexed, I've found that the site keeps getting crawled, and not long after it's in its complete live state, that is what ends up in the Google index. Whereas what I'm finding with this site is that all of the pages in the theme, like prior to any changes being made to the theme, have been indexed. So in other words, just a load of sort of template pages, and almost nothing that I've added to it has yet been indexed. I'm a little bit confused because in Google Search Console, the pages that I've added have been found, and their status according to that is that they've been crawled and indexed. I believe that's specifically what it says. But they haven't been indexed. If I do a site search, only one of the 8 articles that I've written is actually there, which is a bit peculiar. I don't really understand what's going on. And I appreciate that it's not actually strictly relevant to this project that I'm talking about right now, except that it kind of is, because I've done the same thing with Wave to similar effect. But so it's possible that whatever's going on with the side project site, I might need to duplicate with Wave. But anyway, so what I decided to do today is just have a quick look into ways in which you can force Google to recrawl a site, because they've had about 6 weeks to do so, with the 8 articles that I wrote for that site, which feels like quite a long time. So I read up on it a bit, found a couple of out-of-date articles essentially about ways that you can do it within Google Search Console, and then sort of gave up reading, because I feel like I kind of know essentially what you need to do to get recrawled, which is to give Google a reason to recrawl you. And the only way you're going to do that is by getting a couple of links pointing at your site that Google follow, and therefore re-find your site. That certainly makes sense. There's a sort of common sense reason why they would care more about your site and crawl it again. So what I decided to do was spend a bit of time just acquiring a couple of backlinks. Bearing in mind that I don't care about the quality of these links at all, really, as long as they weren't ones actually coming from some kind of horrible spammy part of, well, worse than spam, some kind of dangerous part of the internet, which was never going to be the case. I don't really care how weak they are, how little traffic they might send. I just wanted backlinks that I felt Google might follow. So it actually turned out to be a little bit trickier than I imagined. I started with forums because that's an obvious place to be able to get yourself a backlink from, in the sense that you can just sign up to them yourself, and write something and include a link in it. However, I decided, or at least I just naturally started looking in forums that were related to what this side project is about, which incidentally, although on these videos and podcasts I'm going to talk about pretty much everything to do with the Built from Scratch project, wave to my life, just about anything that is even tangentially relevant. One thing I'm not going to say is what this other side project is about, just because it's not really relevant, it's not actually important, apart from I appreciate it kind of is in this particular episode, and also because it's a fallback if this kind of doesn't work, and as such I don't want to take any kind of risk around damaging it, which is highly unlikely if I were to mention what it is, but not completely impossible. So I apologise for the omission, but I'm not actually going to mention what this project is. So I was looking in forums that are relevant to it, which in hindsight I probably needn't have even done that, given that I really don't care about the quality of these links. I probably should have just sought out something that was large and unregulated, but anyway, I didn't do that. Having done a couple of searches along the lines of best X forum, I got a short list of what appeared to be the best options out there. I started signing up for one and only realised after a few minutes that it was pretty much a dead site. When I started looking at the last time that anyone had written anything in the forums, they were all at least a couple of weeks ago, and almost all of their updates, the recent comments, were in fact from people who were clearly doing what I was trying to do today, just signing up to post a link. And you could tell that because it had a criteria for including links in posts, which is that you needed to have posted 20 times on that site previously. And looking at the most recent comments, there were chunks ascribed to the same people, so someone who'd signed up and then answered a whole bunch of questions. So clearly they were doing it just so they could get over that barrier and post a link. So that one wasn't a great option. Sorry, I should explain that. I mean, given that all I was trying to do was get a link posted somewhere, it could have worked to use that forum, but writing 20 posts, even just brief ones, was going to take a bit of effort, and if they were going to be allowed onto the site, those posts, they were going to need to be moderated based on the messages that I was being shown, and if the site is pretty much dead, I figured that means they were either not going to get moderated because no one's looking at the site anymore, or they were, in which case I would have to make sure they were at least slightly valuable answers, or they would probably just get dismissed by the moderation team. So that would have taken some effort, and I figured it wasn't really worth that kind of effort just to get a link on something that might not be around for that long. As I'm talking, I'm thinking I probably should have just persevered with it, actually. I guess maybe the thing that put me off with that one is actually primarily the fact that it required 20 posts, and that was going to take a while. And I was just further put off by the fact that it wasn't really a very active forum. So the next one I looked at, they had a barrier to posting links again, and in this case it required you to get 3 likes from already accepted members of the forum before you could add a link. That was going to be an issue because although this forum was significantly more active, that could have taken, well, it was an indeterminate amount of effort that would be required to answer enough questions with quality enough answers that 3 people would have independently seen them and actually decided to like them. And this was something I was pretty much trying to get wrapped up today. So I didn't like the look of that too much. And then I found one more, which by all accounts was probably the best, it probably is the best, most active forum in this area at the moment. But I looked at the rules on that one and they simply don't allow links at all. So I was kind of put off using forums at that point, and I decided to move on to business directories. So anyone who knows anything about search engine marketing, SEO, certainly if you've been into it for a while, you'll know about the previous kind of usefulness of business directories, but the fact that these days they're not really useful for SEO purposes at all. But again, in this case, I just wanted something where I would be able to post a link, no questions asked, and I just needed to believe that that link would actually get crawled. And I don't know if business directories will achieve that, but I think it's reasonable to assume that they might. So I searched for a couple in the US initially, because this side project site, it's on a generic TLD. It's something that is for a service that could be used by anyone in the world, really, certainly anyone in the English speaking world. So the US is therefore the primary market for it. So I found a couple that were centered around New York, and in fact, searching for business directories in New York gave a top 3 or 4 results that required payment, even for just a basic listing. And again, I'm not desperate enough to do this to pay or make any kind of substantial effort. But I carried on searching and found a couple that did allow just a basic profile without payment. So I added the site to them. It takes a little bit of work. There are always a few hoops to jump through and some information to add. And I wanted to make the listings look okay, not really because I'm expecting anyone to ever find them, although you never know. I mean, they were half decent directories, so it is just possible I would actually get some direct traffic from these. But it's actually more just that they will probably get checked by the owners of the sites, at least briefly, and I didn't want them to look like they were just a pure half-hearted sort of spammy link grabbing attempt. So I did add a bit of text and a couple of pictures and logos to make them look decent. I then did the same for a couple of UK based business directories, and hopefully that'll work. So yeah, fingers crossed by this time next week I'll have got 4 links coming in, 2 from the US, 2 from the UK, and with a bit of luck that will see my site get crawled again, and I would like to see those articles appear. Again, to relate that to Wave today, that's because I'm going to be in a similar position a couple of weeks from now with Wave, and it would be really nice to know that it is possible to sort of force a recrawl, essentially. One of the slight issues which I'm aware of from previous efforts in this kind of area is that you often get follow-up calls and emails when you sign up to business directories. They can be quite forceful in their sort of direct sales attempts. I am going to be protected, I think, in this case, because I've actually only got a contact form on the side project. There's no phone number or published email address, so I'm going to be kind of protected from that. But that is something to be aware of if you ever sign up to a bunch of business directories online. I would highly recommend setting up an email address that is not one you actually use. Perhaps don't make it obvious that it's just a sort of no reply spam filter, but do set one up, or your primary inbox is going to get full of rubbish for a while at least. So that took a while. It's quite boring work. I know for previous projects I've actually tried building up links and citations by using forums and business directories, and it really is kind of a repetitive, boring slog for not much reward. But I probably won't be doing it again, so no big deal. So then I went through and I spent kind of this. That was pretty much the first half of the day done, to be honest. And I then spent a fair bit of the afternoon going through all my old personal photos, which is just because I'm quite liking what I'm doing with featured images, getting them off Canva. The 12 that I've done so far, found some decent looking images to fulfill this way of doing things, whereby I've decided against trying to find images that are actually anything to do with the content, which is because there's something a bit cheesy, I think. Like, you see it all the time on virtually every blog post you'll ever look at that includes an image. The person will have tried to choose something which reflects the content of that part of the article in image form, which is fine. It's an obvious thing to do and it makes sense, and if it's done well, it's great. And if it actually adds something to the article, some kind of further information or insight, then it's better, then fine, it's necessary. But often it's just a bit obvious and cheesy, and I don't think it is necessary for these posts, so I just decided to go for nice images rather than relevant ones. So Canva's fine for that, but I thought it might be fun to also just look through my own photos of the last sort of 15, 16 years it must be now since I started taking digital pictures. So I spent the afternoon doing that, which is debatably not a great use of time, but it was kind of fun. Just looking through a load of old pictures and picking the most scenic or the most suitable for these posts. So if you look through, the next 50 or so posts are going to be photos that I've taken. And that has essentially been it for today. So I know that is some quite random work. It is not part of the actual flow of the Wave to the project. And that's not great given sort of limited time and whatever. But these last couple of weeks have been weird. I've had 6 days off. Is that right? Yeah, I've had 6 days off out of what should have been the last 10 working days. So although this week has picked up a bit versus last week, it still felt very patchy. And having had the last 2 days off, I wasn't really in the flow this morning. So to be honest, I'm just quite glad I got myself to do some useful stuff, because it has been useful. I've tidied up a couple more sort of admin tasks that I haven't mentioned here, nothing interesting, but it means the decks are now quite cleared for next week when I'm going to be back in for a standard 5-day week, and I should be able to really get into the flow of things. Because there's really very little outstanding now. All I've got to do is set up the generic TLD version of the Wave to the site, which will take as long as it takes. I'm keeping my fingers crossed on that one, and then we're done. it's on to writing out some written content. So I'm sort of feeling okay about that. And that is all I've got to say for this video, apart from my glasses have stopped working, which I guess means my phone has just run out of battery. And also some big social news for the family, which is that my wife is pregnant for the 3rd time. So that's excellent, maybe, I suppose. And we'll see how that goes. It's very, very early days, and anything could happen, but it's our 3rd go round and there's been no issues with the first 2, so I suspect 9 months from now we'll have an addition to the family. There's not a great deal more to say about that apart from the obvious stuff. It's just means I'm going to from 10 out of 10 to 11 out of 10 bothered about trying to make this a success. No, am I? No, not really. It's funny the things that go through my head. That's a load of old rubbish. The fact that we're having another kid doesn't change anything at all with that regard. I totally want to make this a success anyway. So what difference does it make? Nothing, really. So I'll just keep you updated on that kind of stuff in the future. And that's going to be it. I am signing off for today, and I'm looking forward to getting back into things next week and moving on. So I'll see you then. Cheers.